I had a video of the Olympics. I don't know if any of you saw the race, probably some of you did, but in any case, we can't find it on YouTube. So just for fun, I'm going to show you a video of ski flying just to get things started out. This is just bragging. This is my first jump ever ski flying, and I was pretty pumped about the fact that I wore a helmet camera to capture it. I was 10 times more nervous for this jump than for the Olympics. But in any case,
where was that?
That's in Planica, Slovenia. That's a hill that's almost twice the size of the Olympic big hill.
So you're saying this jump's twice the size of the large one here in the class?
Yeah, it's pretty much like taking the two jumps here and stacking them on top of each other. So in any case, that was just for fun. I attended my senior year here in '98, and as all of you know, you have a great opportunity to kind of pursue your athletic careers while getting a great education. And for me, attending NSA allowed me to travel enough to make the '98 Olympic team, and then compete in the games and still graduate with honors from NSA and go straight into my ski career. But Gun Rand was somebody I spent almost as much time with as any of my teachers at the time. In fact, every day at lunch, we would get together and she taught me Norwegian, which to this day is the only language that I can even passively speak. And so she's been trying to get me to come to speak at graduation for probably a decade now, and I've avoided her for 10 years, and finally she nailed me down maybe yesterday or the day before to come and speak to you guys. And peak performance is something that on the Nordic Combined team, and I personally have invested a ton of time and energy into figuring out how to get our peak performance on the snow. And one of the cool things that I've discovered is that what applies to getting your peak performance in your sports is the same thing that seems to apply in everyday life, whether that's school pursuits, educational pursuits, or job pursuits. Sort of the rules that I've come to live by and the values that I've learned that get me to my fastest shape of the season also get me to the goals I have off snow. So I kind of prepared this little PowerPoint off the cuff, and I'd like to share just a couple of things that I've discovered that may help you shortcut a little bit the learning process involved with what it takes to get a peak performance. And Luke's going to drive for me. So one of the things that when I look back at where I've come from and what I've done in my life, a lot of things, especially off snow as well as on, deal with the power of intention. And it's kind of a catchphrase that I've come to use in my own head a lot, where it's about making a long-term plan and working backwards to where you are today. And so when I was younger, when I was an Olympian in '98, I saw my goal as winning the Olympics or winning an Olympic medal in 2002, get in, get out, get done by 21, and get on with life. And I wasn't ready yet, and neither was my team, and we were really, really close. We were 4th place in the team event, but it was a real bittersweet position for us because it was the best American result, and it was one shy of our goal. And it really created this kind of downtime mentally for a lot of us, where we had to revisit long-term goals and make decisions about what we needed to do differently to be able to take that next step onto the podium. And even at the time, it was about whether or not we were going to keep going with what we were doing. And I was actually semi-fortunate enough to have an accident that allowed me to take the next year off. And it was a pretty bad accident, and I ended up fracturing my skull and taking the year off from skiing. But it gave me a little time to get a little perspective, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about in the next 15 or 20 minutes stems from that year off. And I think a lot of you probably have experience with injuries or know athletes who have had injuries, and a lot of times when people come back from injury, they come back and do things they've never done before. Or they do better than they've ever done before. And they also seem to be enjoying themselves more than they ever have before. So that's a little side note. But one of the things that I really feel is important to any pursuit that's worth doing is making a long-term plan, bring that plan backwards to today through a series of goals, which we'll talk about, and kind of being able to see the path from today to that long-term goal. And when I talk about the power of intention, or when I think about the power of intention, it's like living each day by doing things that make sense toward your long-term goal or even your short-term goals, but sort of go with the plan. So you can't just change everything that you're doing and achieve every goal that you want in the next 24 hours, in the next 2 weeks, in the next year probably. But by intending, with that intention in the back of your mind, with your actions and your decisions, you constantly sort of move in that direction of winning that ski race or winning that game or getting into that school or getting that job. One of the most important things I've noticed too is you have to take ownership of your plan. You have to believe it. You have to take ownership of it, write it down, and it really makes all the difference in the world when it's your plan, you own it, versus something that you've sort of agreed to do because that's what the coach says or that's what your teacher says. When you put your butt on the line, that's when you are able to make a peak performance. And that's a lot because, it's your reputation at stake. I guess in my experience with different athletes especially, taking ownership of your goals is always the difference in how hard you really will work, whether you'll actually stick it out through that entire practice or whether you decide to call it quits early. This is one of my favorite quotes that deals with this by Theodore Roosevelt, and I've had this on my mirror for a long time. Do what you can, with what you have, where you are. And I think that's really important as you go through school and as you go through life, is to take advantage of the time that you have to kind of use that power of intention to do things that make sense toward your long-term plan and your long-term goals. Yeah, I mean, for me as an athlete, when I go to a fundraiser in Chicago for a day, I bring a pair of running shoes, I find a park on Google, and I'll go run. Because that's what I can do that day with what I have. And that's the one thing that will, at least if nothing else, make me feel good and make me feel ready to go back to training when I get home the next day. I've already talked about actions and decisions, but it all kind of goes into that power of intention. And last but not least, make a backup plan. Because it doesn't necessarily have to replace your long-term goal or your long-term plan, but if you have an injury or you have a setback, you don't get into the school that you want, it's important to have something to fall back on. And whether it's still in line with your long-term goal or it's moving over to something else that you enjoy, that you want to explore, it's really important. And going back to my injury in 2002, one of the most important things for me was immediately, I didn't have a great long-term plan or a backup plan right away, and it took me a month to kind of get some options open, but I quickly got into UVM's engineering school and had an offer to ski for them and for also the University of Utah. And then the final option that kind of came up was a builder that I used to live with in Steamboat. He invited me to come back and live with his family, and he's like, you go to CMC, I'll pay for a couple classes, so you can get the school side in, and I'll teach you how to build houses. And that was the one, there were two reasons I wanted to do that. I think there was always a curiosity of mine to learn how to build and do something different. I think that was an important time in my life to do something different. But it also gave me an avenue where I could actually make the decision to go back to Nordic Combined. Because by getting involved with a four-year university, at that point I saw myself committing to that line. Whereas like by taking classes and learning how to build houses, I was able to take a hiatus and then go back into skiing when I decided to do that the next spring. So, talked a little bit about goal setting. It's a really important part of your long-term plan, but I find the most valuable goals for me are the short-term ones. It's the tomorrow goal, and it's the next week goal, and it's like the It's the things that help you change and make the right habits to achieve your long-term goals and your long-term plan. We had a Norwegian coach who somehow mispronounced the word scary, so our goals became hairy, which kind of sounds the same, I guess, in more movie terms. But they have to be something that challenges you to make a change and to make a difference. And I remember after my injury in 2002, it was funny because I had taken that year off and I had sort of renewed my motivation, and I sat down and I said to myself, I'm going to enjoy what I do. I want to go back to Nordic Combined now that I've had this time away. I want to, going forward, I want to enjoy what I do every day, or it's not worth doing. And I want to try my hardest, but I'm not going to take myself as seriously as I did before. And that was something I put down a little bit later in this presentation, but that was an important distinction because in 2002 I basically cried and didn't sleep for 6 months because I got 4th place in the Olympics. That sounds pretty funny, but it wasn't exactly a good place to be. And so when I sat down in 2003 with my coaches and myself and I looked forward at what I wanted to do, I actually saw 2010 as being the first chance I would have to win an Olympics. It was like this is going to happen, and this year, 2005, I'm going to get back on the World Cup. 2006, I'm going to have my first chance to win a World Cup again. 2007, I'm going to get on the World Championship podium for the first time. In 2009, I'm going to win it. In 2010, we're going to win medals. And it was just weird because I found that piece of paper like months ago. It was like, wow. So that's a kind of a hairy goal to have when I was ranked 100th in the world in Nordic Combined again back in 2003. But I saw this progression that if I stay the course, if I continue to enjoy myself, I continue to try to get better, this is going to be the succession of steps it's going to take to get to the penultimate goal. But lastly, especially with the short-term goals, your goals have to be achievable. They have to make you they have to scare you a little bit to make you stretch that extra distance, but they have to be something